As the Dark Knight film begins, we get this smoky image of the bat symbol, backed by a ringing sound to indicate the madness of this film. And as the Dark Knight Rises film begins, we get this ice cracking to form the bat symbol, indicating the fact that Batman/Bruce Wayne will break physically in this film. 8 years have passed since the events of the Dark Knight. Bruce Wayne has retired the Batman, withering away in solitude as if he has nothing left to give to the world. Batman, after taking the blame of killing Harvey Dent, is now an enemy, a villain in the eyes of the police of Gotham City, and it takes the menacing villain Bane, played by the talented Tom Hardy, to bring Bruce Wayne back to the suit. This is a moment where, once again, Bruce feels like he has a purpose. Surely it's Batman who numbs the pain of his parents' death. We get the brilliant scene where Alfred, played by Michael Caine, gives an amazing performance, explaining to Bruce that there is more to life than Batman.
You hung up your cape and your cowl, but you didn't move on. You never went to find a life, to find someone.
Alfred goes on to explain the life that he'd like to see Bruce have.
I had this fantasy that I would look across the tables and I'd see you there with a wife, maybe a couple of kids.
And the first time I seen this, man, did this scene hit hard. The first appearance of Batman again was surely enough to make anyone cheer from their seat in the theater, but we're quickly shown the aftermath of Batman now being targeted as a villain in this goosebump-inducing scene. Absolute chills the first time I seen this. I mean, seeing someone that does nothing but dedicate his life to saving people and defeating the villains of the city, just to see him get nothing out of it and only make more enemies is pretty wild. He's really all alone in this fight. Meanwhile, through the film, Bane builds his army in the sewers. He begins a secret plan to rig Gotham City with bombs and take over the city, because Bane isn't joking around. He's here to get things done. We move from the insane villain of the Joker, who attacked Batman mentally, to a brute force of Bane who will attack Batman physically. We get to see the sheer force of Bane in the first epic showdown between him and Batman. The scene plays with a more realistic, tense approach, which I think works very well. The fight concludes with the cracking of Batman's back.
Oh, your money!
Just like the beginning of the film with the cracking of the ice. From here, Bane grabs a hold of Gotham City. Meanwhile, Batman must rebuild himself, because now he sits in a prison, deep in a hole, out in the middle of a desert. And going back to Batman Begins, where his father used to say,
"And why do we fall, Bruce? So we can learn to pick ourselves up."
he literally needs to do exactly that. And he does, bringing not only the story full circle, but also bringing the trilogy full circle, which is extremely fitting for this finale. Once returning to Gotham, he must take back his city from Bane. That's where we get this scene where Batman has come to the conclusion that he has one more thing to give.
You don't owe these people anymore. You've given them everything.
Not everything. Not yet.
And that is his life for the safety of this city. Well, kind of. We'll get to that. That is Batman's final purpose, and that is where Bruce Wayne will finally be okay with hanging up that Batsuit once and for all. The final face-off between Batman and Bane changes from the tense and slower first battle to an epic final showdown. Of course, Batman finally defeats Bane. Now he must do what he set out to do. Batman has to die. Kind of. So in a symbolic way, Batman dies, but Bruce Wayne lives. And just like at the end of The Dark Knight, where he makes everyone believe he is the villain, he now makes sure that everyone knows he is actually the hero. Which, if you ask me, wraps up the trilogy very nicely. Everything just seems to come full circle in The Dark Knight Rises. And dare I say, this ending is perfect. At least as perfect as it could have been following up The Dark Knight. You see, the reason I think that people were first mixed about this movie when it released was because The standards were too high. The standards the Dark Knight film set, of course. I mean, think. Not only did the Dark Knight film hold the cinematic history of Heath Ledger's Joker, who is one of the greatest on-screen villains of all time, but The Dark Knight is also held as one of the greatest films of all time. So how do you top that? Well, you don't, but you do your best to end the story, which is what Christopher Nolan did in The Dark Knight Rises. You see, my point is, it didn't matter how great The Dark Knight Rises would be, it just wasn't going to satisfy everyone after coming off of The Dark Knight. But now that it has been almost a decade since its release, I think now we can reflect on all of its strengths and what it set out to be, which is a satisfying conclusion to an amazing trilogy. I think it's safe to say that this film has aged like fine wine. What I mean by that is, over time it's just gotten better. This has been Absolute Filmmaking. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. Until next time, goodbye.